You know it's been a good year for games when you have to print out an Excel spreadsheet in front of you just to remind yourself of what games have come out this year. I kept running across games I have played this summer with shock, feeling in my heart that they simply must have come out in 2010 and not games I finished in S-Rank only a few months ago. There's a certain bias towards games that come out in winter simply because they're fresher in our minds, but every game still has an equal chance in the end. Perhaps the best thing about this year is that games we all assumed were going to be Game of the Year are not necessarily the ones that will be at the top of the list. Don't get me wrong, a great game is a great game, and even ones left off the list more than deserve large amounts of praise, but it speaks well of the industry that we can still be surprised by how things shake out. That said, maybe you'll be surprised by my picks, maybe you won't, but I can safely say this is a fantastic year for video games. Unless you're into some truly niche genres, there was something for everyone this year, and usually it was extremely high quality. For brevity's sake, since I'm doing this in video and not in text, I'm going to only focus on a couple of categories. This doesn't encompass every game I truly loved this year, and there will eventually be a supplement for this list, but it does give you an idea of what I consider the best games of this year. The categories are handheld games, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PC, and overall Game of the Year. So without further delay, here are my picks for 2011. Probably the earliest released game on this list, Ghost Trick should be well known to anyone who prizes DS graphic adventures. Brought to you by the people behind Ace Attorney, Ghost Trick is a more linear puzzle-based take on the genre. You play as Sissel, the lead corpse of the game, in an attempt to solve his own murder before the end of the night. Ghost Trick isn't perfect by any means. Sometimes puzzle design can get a little too obtuse, and when it's not obtuse, it's incredibly linear. There's a right way to do things, and if you don't do it that way, you keep doing it until the game says it works. Despite the linearity of the gameplay, the characters are charming, the music is catchy, and the story is one of Shu Takumi's most absurd but still most intriguing. By the end of the game, you want to know the circumstances behind Sissel's death almost as much as he does. In a year with 2 new handheld launches, though one of them only in Japan, Ghost Trick still somehow managed to be the best game on all of them. The animations are some of the best, most meticulous work I've seen in a handheld game yet, and they contribute to making every character more than just picture and some text. If you think Ghost Trick would be up your alley and simply haven't had the time or the inclination to give it a chance yet, go ahead and try it. It survived all the way since January as my favorite handheld game of the year. While it may seem Zelda had the Wii Category 1 essentially by default, perhaps even winning due to its main competition getting a last-minute 2012 US release announcement, thus eliminating it from the running, it takes nothing away from Skyward Sword as a game that is essentially the only major Wii title released this year. Skyward Sword is a polarizing game, not even just as far as Zeldas go, but games in general. Where it lies on the spectrum of quality is going to differ wildly from person to person. It's rare we get those kinds of games, and while polarity may not be a deciding factor in Game of the Year, it is oddly refreshing to realize that precognitive objectivity is not the sole factor either. There are things about this game I can complain about. One late game scenario where you swim for musical notes easily comes to mind. Things like this are obvious padding in a game that did not need it. Were it not for places like this, Skyward Sword would easily rank among the best games ever. It's that loss of potential that's ultimately tragic. The game itself is amazing in ways most games simply aren't anymore. There's crap to dig through, but there didn't need to be. As we close out the generation or tease with another Zelda already, I can't think of a better way for the series to close out its SD legacy than with this title. Skyward Sword is not simply a great game for the Wii, it is a great game, period. Infamous 2 is a game that learned from its predecessor and the dozens of open-world games that came between them, which is not something you can say about a lot of series, even AAA games like Assassin's Creed. What Infamous 1 did wrong, Infamous 2 did right. Traversal, combat design, animation. The story is not nearly as good, but it helps make up for it with an ending that has more finality to it than the first game did.
You pick her when we're through, man.
You pick her? I have no choice, Cole. I have to hunt you down like a criminal.
What makes Infamous 2 the best PS3 game of the year is that it's simply a blast to play. It's not the prettiest game of the year and may not have a world of hype behind it, but it's fun and well designed and not overly buggy, and that's more than I can say for a lot of PS3 games this year. In combination with the improved Halloween campaign, Infamous 2 stands head and shoulders above a lot of games this year, proving that you don't need to break the bank to make a great game. A few years back, there was a sudden explosion of Gears of War clones that eventually just sort of petered out. While they didn't really meet with success, I think a lot of developers realized there's more to this series than just simply a third-person perspective and a dude-bro aesthetic. Every combat scenario in Gears 3 is designed to keep you on your toes and keep things fair. Enemies flank you, but not without warning. There's always a weapon nearby to make things easier, if you're good enough to get to it. The combat design also allows players to create movement organically. I can't count the number of times something extremely cool has happened because a friend and I did things off the beaten path, like taking on an armored Cantus with just a torque bow and some grenades. The story is laughably bad, and poor even by standards of the series, but it's mostly forgettable. It's not the way I would have chosen to end this trilogy, but it's the way Epic did. It's kind of shitty the way they chose to close things out like that.
Are we got an echo here or something? Yeah, Prescott's back, Michelson's dead, and my father's alive. Film at 11.
Gears of War 3 is the best third-person shooter of this generation, with excellent multiplayer, smart combat design, and truly amazing graphics. If you've been put off by the series because of the aesthetic, you're missing something great below the surface. In this case, feel free to call it a comeback. Deus Ex Human Revolution is one of the best games released this year. Where it stumbles is nothing compared to where it soars, and it stands as a testament to developers like BioWare, that you don't need to dumb down systems like conversation or persuasion for the lowest common denominator.
I did. She's safe, but running. I think she plans on leaving the city.
To be honest, the choice between Deus Ex and Skyrim was difficult, but a few too many hard locks from the latter threw the argument in Deus Ex's favor. The game does not beat around the bush. Your actions have consequences from the second you take control, from your ex-wife complaining that you're reading her email in front of her, to a bad decision to seek medical attention at the wrong time. Deus Ex Human Revolution does not live with the fear that players will not see everything, like so many other video games today do. What kept Deus Ex from ultimately winning Game of the Year for me is that the boss fights, which we now know to be outsourced, you can definitely feel it in the game, exemplified a cardinal sin for video games. If you're going to add something, make sure it's fun, otherwise don't do it. At least the game let me break said boss fights by lugging in heavy hits, so that's appreciated even if it's not intended. Deus Ex Human Revolution is probably the best thing to come out of Square Enix in years, and won the hard-fought battle to be my PC Game of the Year. Portal 2 has this weird sort of appeal. It doesn't dumb itself down to mainstream audiences who still enjoy the game, it doesn't pander to gamers by including nerd jokes, especially ones from the previous game, and gamers still love it. Portal 2 has that weird, Pixar-like quality of appealing to all audiences, and doing it while being the best game released in 2011.
How you doing down there? Still holding on?
There are several times in Portal 2 where I would look around the room, frustrated, wondering what the solution to the puzzle was. The answer usually had to do with something I'd written off or not paid attention to that was actually critical. Nothing in Portal 2 is designed for you to ignore it. Everything is in the room for a reason without being obvious about it, and that is absolutely brilliant. While the Source engine is definitely showing its age, Portal 2 still looks stunning. Valve actually uses the age of the engine to do things like rendering the game world twice, flawlessly, with co-op's picture-in-picture feature, which is invaluable. There was no point in programming Portal 2 that someone said, this is good enough. They made it better than that. The writing is the best in a Valve game yet, and pretty much sets a standard for the industry. The voice actors are well known, but not mega celebrities that other publishers like to brag about getting, and do their jobs far better than the Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption.
Do you understand what I'm saying? At all? Does any of this make any sense? Just tell me, just say yes.
Portal 2 is the complete package. Brilliant single player, excellent and fleshed out co-op, DLC that's both free and high quality, and one of the best final modes I've ever seen. That's why it's my Game of the Year of 2011.